Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to tell you how can you create your first AI assistant using Assistant API provided by OpenAI. So you must have already witnessed this in last week's OpenAI's Dev Day conference, wherein whole bunch of new features were released. And these are a few of the highlights from that event. So I'm not going to get into each of these, but the one which I'm going to focus today is the Assistant API. So let's talk about Assistant API more. So Assistant API is the one using which we can build our own AI assistants within our own applications. And there are few components I would say which you need to understand before start building this OpenAI. So let me quickly show you a sketch. This doesn't look good, but this is what I created just a few seconds before. An idea here is to demonstrate what are the key components which are going to help us to generate the responses whenever we are creating the assistant. Okay, so when we are using Assistant API, first thing we need to do is we need to create an assistant. So assistant is the one who is going to do the job on behalf of us. So here inside assistant, this is the first block which is assistant, and you need to provide instruction, data, model as well as tools to this. So assistant is the one which is constructed using all these four components. And coming on to the instructions, so instructions is nothing but how you want your assistant to behave. So you can say you are an assistant doing this, or you are a weather expert who tells about weather updates, or you are a professor doing this, you are a teacher doing this, or you are a funny guy who tells the jokes. So all these things are the instructions. Coming on to the data, so data is nothing but the data files which you are going to input to this assistant, and using those data files, assistant is going to answer the questions. Coming on to the model, so definitely we need to provide information about the model, that which model our assistant should use. So it could use GPT-3.5, or it could think GPT-3.5, and one more was GPT-4 models. But if you are dealing with retrieval tool, then you must have to use either GPT-3.5 Turbo 1106 or GPT-4 1106 preview models. And another note is it does support fine-tuned ones. So definitely you can try this with your fine-tuned models. Coming on to the tooling part, so currently it supports three different kinds of tool. The first one is for coding, which is called as code interpreter. It will assist you in generating the code. Second one is the retrieval, which I guess most of us are already aware of it. And the third one is the function calling. So if you're not sure what this function calling is, I have already created a video long back on that. So I would recommend you to go through my OpenAI playlist and you will find one over there. Okay, so this is all about assistant, and definitely assistant will have a unique ID which is named as which is known as assistant ID. You can provide the name of your assistant, you can provide some description. So, all these things you can do with this assistant. So, now we are done with our assistant part. Next thing is how to handle the messages and the communication. So, the messages are handled using a concept called thread. So, whenever user is sending a message, a thread will be created. And thread is nothing but you can understand this as a way of handling the communication between the user and our model. So again, every message will have its own thread ID, which will uniquely identifies that particular communication between the user and the system. Now, assistant ID as well as thread ID both will work together in order to run our entire system, and that's where we have the run calls. So I will quickly show you in a while when we will start coding for it. But before that, to understand that this is just a high level picture, and as usual, like other models, OpenAI does provide the playground for it. And before that, you can have a look at this API documentation in case if you want to know like what all models is supposed. So these are the two models which I was talking, the preview ones, and it will guide you about what your it will guide you on the response type, how it looks like, and what all things you need to pass in. Okay, so let me quickly show you. So you can click on this assistance overview. You can check how it works. So it will definitely tell you what all things it does, what is assistant, what is thread, message, run, and these are the quite few steps we need to perform. So I will take you to the coding part now. Let's build a small assistant which will take a text file as an input and will answer the questions based on the input data. So the very first thing we need is we need to define the keys. So here we need two different types of keys. One is the OpenAI key and the second one is the organization key. So if you're not sure how to pull out the organization key, you can just click on these settings, and inside this you will get your organization key. Similarly, you can go to API keys and you will find your API key. So these are the only two keys we need, and I have already installed OpenAI package on my machine. So that's all I did in this particular virtual environment. Let's go ahead and write in some code to pull some of the packages. So before pulling, let me quickly create, okay, let me first pull in the packages. So from OpenAI, I would import OpenAI. And then here itself, I can go ahead and create the client, which is going to deal with all these things. So this is the OpenAI client. It is going to take two parameters. The first one is API key, which I will define in a while. And then we need to have organization. So this is the organization, and here we need to define. So I have already defined these two in my environment variable. So let me quickly grab those. So here is my OpenAI key, and similarly I will pull in my organization key as well. So it is nothing but my organization ID. So you need a combination of both of the combination of these two in order to generate the client. So let me run this. Let me run this as well. Oops. So I did some mistake. Bracket is missing. So let me add that. Oh no. So there is one more. The key itself is not present. So I need to put on ID here. Okay, so we are good to go. So once the client is constructed, next thing is we need to go ahead and figure out what all files we are going to use. So this is the portion where we are going to upload our files or associate our files, you can say. So for that, I'm going to create a variable name file, and for each and everything now onwards we will be using this client object as a first point. So it is having a function which is client dot files dot create, and inside that you can see there are various parameters. The first one which I'm going to pass is the file, and we need to open this file in a binary mode. So I would just say the name of my file, which is homelessness.txt. This is the same file which I have taken in my earlier videos as well. And let me define the mode also. So this is one thing, and second thing is we need to define the purpose, what we are going to do with this file. So here you can see the second parameter here is the purpose. So let's pull on that one and say purpose equal to, it's for assistance. So I would just say assistance. So once this is done, we are done with our file handling part. I will quickly show you how you can fetch the list of files. So in my case, I'm just taking one, but if you are having multiple files and if you're not able to remember what all files you have uploaded, you can just say client.files.list, and it will get you the list of all the files which you have created with this client. And this is the file ID, the size of the file created, the file text, I mean the file name, and all those things will appear over here. So you have multiple files, just add all of those over here and we are good to go. Now we have the files. Next thing is we need to create the assistant and give access to this file. So for creating the assistant, what we will be doing is, let me go ahead and create a variable name assistant. And like I said, we will be using this client object for whatever we are doing. So we'll say client dot, as it is still in beta, so that's why it is having beta word over here. And I would call assistant dot create. Now it is going to take again a bunch of parameters. So like I have shown you here, These are the four things: instruction, data, model, and tools. So let me go ahead and define each of these. So instructions, we need to provide some instruction over here. Then we need to provide model. So model, I'm using here GPT 3.5 Turbo 1106. So let me quickly type it: 3.5 Turbo 1106. So this is my model. And coming on to the tools part, so I would say tools. So here you can define any number of tools because it's a list. But the one which I'm going to use here, as it is just a first demo, I would just go with the retrieval, because it's most of us are aware of this concept, and it would be easy for them to understand what we are doing here. So retrieval. So this is the tool which we are going to use. And another thing which is remaining is the input data or the files. So for that we have a oops we have a property name, file IDs. So here everything works based on the ID. So even files will have ID, assistant will have its own ID, message will have its own ID, the runs which we are going to perform will have its own ID. So everything is purely based on the IDs. Okay, so for file ID, what I can say is I have already created a variable in above step, you can see. So I will just say file.id and it will give me the ID of the file. Let's run it. Okay, so we are done with our assistant creation. Next thing is we need to create a thread. So let's create a thread. And creating a thread is again very straightforward. So I'm going to create a variable named thread and would say client.beta dot threads dot create. So you can see that these things are very consistent: client dot beta dot. So and then we are just replacing whether it is thread, then do thread dot create. If it's assistant, then say assistants dot create. Now inside the thread we need to pass in the sorry oops so we will just create a thread. So this is the line which is going to create a thread for us. Next is we need to use add user messages to it. So for that we will create a variable name message and we'll say client dot beta dot threads. Like I said, messages will be part of thread. I can quickly show you. So messages will be the part of thread. So that's what I'm going to do here. So client dot beta dot threads dot messages dot create. Now it is going to take few parameters, and the first parameter would be thread ID. So I'm going to say thread.id. So thread is the one which I created in above step. Then we need to define the role for which we are doing. So it would be user role in this case. And then we need to define the content. So content is the question which user is going to ask. So I would say, how is poverty related to homelessness? So this is what I'm going to create as a message. Okay, so we are done with our message construction. Next thing is we need to run the assistant so that we can get the response out of it. So for running the assistant, what we can do is I'm going to create a new variable run, and it would be client dot beta dot threads dot runs dot retrieve. And let's pass in again say similar kind of parameters. So the first one is thread ID, which is thread dot id. And before that we need to construct the object for run. So let me quickly do that first. So I would say client dot beta dot threads dot runs dot create. And herein we need to pass all the parameters, like what is assistant ID, what is thread ID, what is the instruction, and all those things. So let's say thread id equal to thread.id. Then we need to mention the assistant id, so it would be assistant.id. And the final thing is instructions, which I will define in a bit. So we can just give simple instructions. Please do not answer the questions which are outside the document, which are outside the document. So this is the simple instruction which I'm going to give. Let's run it. Okay, now we can go here and do this part. So we have thread and we need another parameter which is run id, and this we can grab it from our previous step. So let's do run id. It will go ahead and run it. And once the run is done, what we can do is we need to check the status. So because this is a step which is going to take time. Okay, so sometimes it will show you in progress, but most of the time it will just say completed depending on the speed. And once the status is completed, we are good to ask, I mean, get the read the response basically. So we'll say messages, and this message we can get it from client dot beta dot threads dot messages dot list. And inside this we need to pass in for which thread we are going to get this. So let's say thread id equal to thread.id. Okay, now it's just a loop which we need, as we just need to write a loop so we can iterate to all the messages. So we can say messages, and let's go ahead and simply print it msg dot content. And in the first content it's the message property, text property. So text dot value. So let's run it and see how it goes. Okay, so here it is saying that okay, poverty and homelessness are closely related, and this is the information which it is getting from my text file itself. So it is not nothing which is coming from outside. So all these information I have already defined in my text file. So this is how you can run your assistant locally. Let me save it. And another thing is I can show you. So although we are running it using code, we can still test it using the UIs. So that's the best part of this assistant API. So it will get generated. So you can go to platform.openai.com assistants, and here you should see the assistant which is generated. So this is the same assistant which we deployed just few minutes back. And you can rename it if you want. You can give some good name. You can update this instruction. You can change the model here, whatever it supports. You can enable or disable these things. You can enable this, and you can upload the files from here. So these all are the things. So I have already uploaded one file, so it is showing over here. You can save it, or if you want you can revert it. Let me just save it. Okay, so you are a helpful assistant. It is coming because I think we didn't provide any message over here. Let me quickly check it. So here. So here we were supposed to provide a message, something like you are a professor, something like that. Whatever you want, you can just define the role here basically. So I'm not going to run it again because I have to go through the entire flow. So we missed it. That's the reason it just picked the default one. You are a helpful assistant. So let's go here and test it out. So here you can click on text and you can see that this is the place where you can ask the questions. So add and run. So what this document is all about. So on the right hand side, you can see that it is giving you all the logs, what all API calls are being made. So you can just click on hide logs and it will go off. So here it is saying the document provides a comprehensive overview of homelessness. So these are the details which are fetched directly from my document, and my document just contains some information which I grabbed from Wikipedia. So you can ask more questions, you can even attach files from here, and lot many things you can do. So this is basically a rough idea of how you can use this particular feature to create your own first assistant. So perhaps I will cover more videos on this with different kind of tooling apart from retrieval. So stay tuned and do let me know how you find this video. Thanks for watching.